more concerned about all of this than we would. They would be so like trying to control everything and trying to control everybody. Because see, for us, we already have like a guaranteed certificate. If you can still care, this is the signature. It's like, so what is it? Is it the color? No, it's whether you can care or not. It's whether God has hardened Pharaoh's heart, which is a system of magic. Imagine, so what God proceeds to do the next day is kill the firstborn. But Pharaoh wanted to let those people go, meaning if you understand the story, Pharaoh wanted to let the people go, but God said, no, don't let them go. I'm going to make you not let them go so that I can kill everybody, all the kids in the morning. What is this? And that's what I'm saying. If you believe those kind of narratives, and they're not saying that there is not a purified version of the seraphim and the cherubim. There's not a purified version, but it ain't nothing about what they're talking about. They actually have made a physical story out of something that is really the true Temple of Solomon in itself, which is this. And their holiest of holies has been breached. That's why they call it Freemason. The Freemason were a group of entities, those ones that came off the moon, the ones that came off the ark. Now, when I say they came off, they're still in there. It's like when the sun shines through the moon, it goes through them like a reflector, and they project their energy onto the reality. That's how the whole thing works. So as the moon moves, so too now the energy changes. And that's why it's like you got all these different variables of moons. It's not like the same moon. That's why the ancients, the beaver moon, the deer moon, they got different names for these moon cycles, because it's like an archon. When the moon is moving into a certain degree on the parallax, the archon is actually being enlightened and spraying its light into the planet, but they're stealing the light from the sun. You see what I mean? In that technically. And this stealing the light from the sun meaning just abusing the youngsters. You know, youngsters go in there like kind of like what they would even do in the football with the Nephilim or the NFL, where they got like the young cats come in and they get hit. You know what I mean? They trying to get him all caught up. And so it's like, it gets weird on earth. You see what I mean? It becomes cliquish. This is the other thing. It becomes, see, the frequencies and the spectrums themselves, those become the clicks, right? And so that's what I was saying before, that if you're a being that you can get to the center, and you're not polarized and thinking that this fake ass character based on what real is really you, and you solidifying it at like, yeah, I'm this. I'm Sevan Bomar. You're going to stay in Sevan Bomar for lifetimes until you realize that that's a id, that's an ID. So you have, that's not you, right? So you know how that works. You know what I mean? Those are the classics of this.
Well, let me ask you this, Sevan. This is my last question that I'm gonna ask you. No, I think two. I got two more. I don't know. It depends on how it goes. This conversation is just going so well. You know, I don't know, brother. I don't know. But you know, you talking about what you're talking about, and also one of the things you speak on in terms of your message to humanity is about the division system and about race. Like I said, I like to use this ancient knowledge, and you deal with polarity. I like to use this ancient knowledge to teach us in modern times, you know, in terms of the melanated people on this planet and what we've been through. And politically right now, you can see, you know, in terms of politics, you know, melanated people want reparations. What I'm thinking about for what has been done to us, I'm thinking about spirituality and what you're talking about, and us being characters down here. Is it possible, Sevan, that in another timeline, in another life, a melanated person might have been a slave master who was whooping on a melanated person, and in this lifetime, they may have experienced the incarnation of a melanated person? So what I'm saying is, in one lifetime, we're the person we don't like, and then another person lifetime, we're the person who, you know, the opposite person, and we're asking for something, or we're preaching about something, and the same people that we are preaching against is the same person that we were in a prior lifetime. And the reason why I ask this is the last thing is because some people say that depending on your amount of melanin, you can't leave a certain dimension. You can't leave a certain plane. Your ass is stuck somewhere. And that's where the hatred and jealousy come from. So I'm trying to figure out, does dark matter consciousness, could it incarnate it to anybody? Or does only certain people get this material? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I will say it this way: is first of all, nobody's getting away with anything.
Yeah.
Meaning that everything that people will do in their lives will be written on their DNA. And if they draw debt, which is based on their discernment, because you know when you're doing something that is kind of like on that shady side, it's a natural compass, right? So we don't need other people to judge us. It's like, okay. And then what you try to always do is just balance out. So I used to even have this thing, like I was like, if I see myself, I'm about to do something, maybe I'm going to drink or something, I stop cussing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was always conscious that you want to stay balanced with this, you don't want to get excessive, right? And that's just kind of common sense. But I think, in digging deeper into what you're talking about in relation to, like when you're talking about races, to me, what all that is really based on is it's based on how much soul force you have and how mineralized are you. Okay? So what this is about is that you have souls that are very young, right? Like they're just budding. They're almost like in themselves as the society gets weaker, their consistency in itself doesn't contain like what you would say is almost like a heirloom version of that same seed. Because, you got these qualities in the seed. And then you even got some of the seeds where they get so watered down, it's like they're coming in and out of lives so fast, there's no time to mineralize. And this is a lot of times based on the portal that is being used in order to get in and out of lives. So as you know, that those who are melanated and some that are what you would perceive as not melanated have had relationships with what would be seen as reptilian or serpentine kind of beings, and using that as a form of being able to enter into the reality. So I see life as a soul cooker. That and with the ultimate goal to refine every soul, whether we think so or not, because that's what it gets into. It gets into turning dirt into gold. So even the worst person that you can think of is only primed for this thing to take it through the entire process of how it was designed. And our body is designed the same way. And I find that, like, when we see the external saga that is running is like somebody is kind of interrupting your dream, to be honest, because a lot of stuff here we're trying to make sense out of, but it's like we're trying to make sense out of foolishness. We're already approaching the reality from some deception that we're all separated and not the same organism. We're not only all the same organism, the whole planet is also the same organism, and nobody is detached from the organism. So then when we start creating this, like, well, these are phantoms and these are vampires and ghosts. Yeah, those exist too. And they very well be one. But if they're on Earth, we all know in occultism, for anything to manifest into the physical reality, it has to contain a certain amount of energy, which kind of brings it above the classification of ghost or ghoul. Now, as I said before, still though, this person could have been a pig before, because those are transitory animals. They could have been sheeps. Like, if you didn't peep out, a lot of the genetics, even within the Arabs and the Israelis, is that of the ancient, what you would say is a sheep, and the ancient, what you would say is a goat. Like, really, like a cherubim. When you talk about a cherubim and you're talking about the horn beings, you're talking about that, not just that these are like spirits running around, but the genetics. These are the jinn that were put into the wombs to create the first fathers and mothers of these people. You see what I mean? That's why when you look at the stars, most of the stars line out to being animals, right? Like this is a dove, this is right. Don't we have other things like sextants and compasses and all that kind of stuff? Why is most of this animals? And it's because the animals play a gigantic role in this, because it's the animals' wombs being used. But this is why they kind of missed in the whole Anunnaki story. They explain that these Anunnakis they went into these animals, but the old ones. So like the old ones were larger. So they basically copulated with everything that had a womb. Okay, that's why this thing is so crunk, because then when they copulated with everything that had a womb, the offspring from that were what they call the monsters, the mighty men of renown. It's just because their attitudes. So then but mind you, the masters of these matrices already be knowing what they're doing, because they're literally first mixing up a strong batch. And they're about to water that thing all the way down. They're about to step this thing all the way down, just like alchemy. They're about to have this thing so diluted that you're going to have like a small, tame, cute one when they're done. He's going to have a lion at the house. You know how like we like to take these ferocious ass beasts and then be having them hanging around licking us in the face? Yeah. This is pretty much what domestication is. And we got to realize that the human being is not Google, as his name, Gilgal. And some of those big 6-finger, you know, all the Saturn aliens have 6 fingers because they work on a system of 12, which is the Merkabas. You see what I mean? The chariots and the UFOs and all that kind of stuff. It files into that. And guess what? So I heard somebody say, oh, my goodness, Earth is doomed. Oh, my goodness, Earth. Your Earth may be doomed. But you need to realize, actually, if you follow something that is doomed, you will be doomed. Earth is not what you think. The pristine, pure Earth is going on right now, for real. Just like we've been talking about this quantum theory and everything. The height of Kemet and everybody doing in a climax, that is a space and time. And there's a ritual that is being done there all the time to make sure that that can be accessed. So meaning that in every height of society, we do a ritual at that height. We record that point. That's what talismans are. You're recording a point of height of energy. And then that serves as an interface to that. And that's why all of our symbol, like all of our deep symbolism, all of our ancient languages, all those kind of things, we need to understand, because we don't know that, because we don't even know Euclid's elements, our whole data pack is just gone. Now, here's the thing. This is why they say when they look at these shapes, it starts to make you feel a certain way. So it's just like something you're concentrating on. And why are you concentrating? Because you got to boil down, this is stupid. I'm bored. I don't see anything. Is this supposed to do something? I would love if this was a video. Is this 5 minutes already? What is he talking about? You see what I mean? So the mind is just like, this is not the mind of Alexandria. You know what I mean? Where it's like, because the reason why you would be gung-ho about all of this stuff is if you already had got a taste of the dream, or you knew that your master had, and he even sent a projection to you. So basically, it's like you were growing up in a guild of people who you knew was the truth. So you just knew that once you had really graduated, you would get to that level, and there was like nothing in between that, like no scam, no sale, no none of that, right? And you know, now that support system, we don't see that support system. So we have to really see in our consciousness, so what happens after we don't have our support system? So even the direct beast, because I won't let anybody get off with it here, there's a reason why you have a large amount of African-American males in prison. And the one who's running the prison is called the warden, and he's the that's why I said the God here is named War. So the one who's watching over all these guys, his name is War too, and he watches over the den. But what war? What happened? And that's what the trick here is. Because imagine that we had a whole clash with a whole different race of beings, and even the knowledge of that clash is hidden. So that way it's like, because you see, the thing is that obviously that's a part of the treaty. Okay, so the treaty is like, once you're overwhelmed, the treaty then is one, you can't use your powers, and you don't have access to your Ra. The Ra is evil. That's why in Yiddish, Ra means evil, because Ra is the sun. Ra is a neural network mainframe that contains all of the data from not only this planet, but also other planetary systems. And having access to that interface immediately enlightens you. However, if your ladder is broke, because remember, all this is going on inside of you. So if you become enlightened, that means literally that everything that is on the bottom of your body is going to try to make an exodus into your mind. So it's like the great teacher has to exist within all the parts of your body and that's basically the conditions of your organs, the conditions. That's why all this is all internal, the conditions of your blood. Because when everybody starts to exodus and try to go to the promised land, you see what I mean? They are all now going to be tasked to go up to Mount Meru. And some ain't going to make it. And you got to be able to nourish them along the way. That's why that's the whole shepherd thing. So, and what you're nourishing is to like move it when it's trying to get too far to the left or when it's trying to get too far to the right, your energy. That's what I say. Straight and narrow is the way. That's the sushumna. It's the column. And all this means is that as you're waxing stronger in your power, you're trying to avoid polarizing, because the moment you polarize, it looks like a thermometer. So imagine your spine is a thermometer, and that, you know how that red thing goes up? That's Kundalini. And then when your degrees is going up, which is what they call the levels in the systems of knowledge, as your degrees is going up, you're rising into the degrees. But if you divert for one moment, it changes your pressure and your temperature, like your temper, your temperament. And this is why humans get siphoned all the time. It's like basically like they never charge up, because they're always getting siphoned for a little bit of energy, which comes out during the duality, which manifests as the pole shift within their body that is turning them from even more acidic. And then they basically leak the energy into the space, into the ground. Because it wasn't, again, like some people are like, yeah, they eat our energy. Remember what I said, there's more energy than you can take, than you can handle. Energy is not the thing here. It's control.
Emotional control?
It's control. It's remote control. Ooh. Emotional remote control, where that's what marketing is. It's to be able to pull on the strings or the chakras of the person and play them like a lyre.
This is good stuff. This is good stuff.
You see what I mean? And with the tones of the lyre and the beating of the thimble,
this is good stuff.
And that all that is pulling the chords, right? So then it doesn't. But see, notice how it's weird, because if you get played, then your first reaction is to shut down that center. Like, okay, I ain't gonna get played like that no more. And then what you're literally doing is you're basically putting up a sign at that part of the body and saying closed, which would be probably accesses to ventricles in your heart. And where you can get the real feeling. That's why all the brain tissue and all that's around there, but all that's closed. And then obviously when it's time to send some neuron and some information down that channel, it's deadened like lead, which is the opposing force of Saturn, right? It's a bullet. It's an L. It's a gun. Right? It's not an electron. See, Elohim is an electron. It's the penis. It spits an electron into the woman. Okay, that's Elohim. It's 90 degrees, because when you bend two mirrors together at 90 degrees, the mirror allows you to see your real self. See, when you look at a mirror right now, you're seeing opposite self, right? So how do you see the true you? I got a mirror in the bathroom. It works just like that. It's a 90-degree bent mirror. So when you look at it, you see your actual self through your own eyes. Because you're most of the time not running around looking at you. You're running around looking at the opposite of you. So this is why opposites attract in a broken world. I mentioned this yesterday. They say opposites attract. Yeah, in a broken world, because just like I said, when a magnet already breaks and the male splits from the female and they're no longer in the same organism, opposites will attract in that kind of space. So you'll get a healer with a killer. And while some people think that that's great and fine and dandy, because at least, and as I was mentioning, that they then romanticize it, like, and then the healer, you know, she tames this beast, and you know, they'll go through all this, and he cried, and they had lived happily ever after watching Notebook. So we romanticize everything, but truly, it's going to be a very traumatic experience for the healer, not the killer. And so there's this aspect of reality. No, it's not. That's why it's like also, see, the thing is that they be alkaline. It's like, wait a minute. It's not alkaline. It's pH balance, because acid can be bad. Acid can be good. There's no such thing as good acid, brother. There's no such thing as good negative, brother. You see what I mean? So it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's start with a pure language then, because that's what we're really talking about. See, English is a broken language. English, if you was trying to communicate something, you would basically only have half of it in the first place with English. And again, we communicate to ourselves with this language. So we built an eidolon from this star. So English is a star language. All the language is a star language, right? But it traces out a specific pattern in the sky. This is important because it's like if you trace out that specific pattern, that's the stars we're working with, and the rest of the stars we aren't. So that's the data set. When we trace out certain stars, which you call letters in the sky, and then we manifest them into to these words, but you skip all of the other stars, your program that you're going to be using is just only going to be about the story of those particular constellations. And that's why we have this 7 days and this kind of stuff, because it's just about these specific 7 stars. You see what I mean? And then every single day of the week, we serve the ritual of continuously enlivening these 7 stars. And these 7 stars are also in our body. Right? That's how the chakra system is laid out. The chakra system is also corresponds to a planet. So then it's like, but at some point, a mirror is shown to us, and we get into this external worship rather than self-worship, if you may. And then self-worship is actually where you go in your body and you really set things straight, because you do know that, like, if you're a very passive, kind of naive person, things will run over you inside of your own body. Entities will be all up on you trying to run your life. And so that's why it takes these wake up calls sometimes, because you realize, like, when I had to wake up was when I got put away for a little bit. And it was because, like, everything was good for a while inside of my mind and was making all this money, and all these people loved me, and all the cars and all the 112 and all that kind of stuff. And then when I got burned out and then I did something and got put away, it was like that form of consciousness was like, you're stupid. Why did you do all of that? Look at where we're at now. And then I'm like talking back to this consciousness, like, what do you mean? Like, you was having fun, and then I caught myself. And I was like, who are you talking to? And that's when it clicked for me that when you're talking to yourself in English and it's talking to you back in English, you've created something with English. And because English is a mystical language, it is connected to the star, you have the being living inside of your consciousness. And you can oftentimes confuse this being to actually being you, especially when you turn off your feelings. Because if you don't have any feelings, the only thing then to communicate with is language. And this, now you're in, now you're in its hands, right?
Yeah,
because it's a master of these linguistic things. But that's why I'm saying people can talk all they want, but man, you got to get in. And you know what I mean? That's where the transition's happening. And so for me just continuing to go in, not just delivering the message. That's why things get a little crazy for me, because I got other dynamics. Like, not only we're inventing stuff, we're helping children in inner cities. You know, we're bringing STEM and getting them, make sure they're up to speed. You know, we're building other platforms. We're making sure that we're ahead in the future. You know, we're tapping into the neural networks to see what is the depth of what kind of knowledge is already available when you actually tie thousands of minds together and get them to collaborate and see it. You see what I mean? Like, if people understand, like, I own text-to-image.ai on all levels, and text-to-image just became the biggest thing. Do you see how I own all those domains? Do you see how far we are ahead? So, see, the thing is that we keep thinking that this lethargic slug moving through the reality that says it's in control is actually more advanced than we are. And that's not what's happening. It just keeps trying to dumb us down and keep it inside of its narrative. Now, the narrative is very important. NAR is very important. The narrative of things is basically, who's the narrator? Okay. This is why I'm saying the narrative is so important in controlling your future, because who is the narrator? What role does a narrator play inside of a movie? It's that voice that's talking that seems to be trying to explain what's going on in the movie, right? So what if I told you that eidolon that was created through the language that you've been genuflecting with yourself with is most of the time in a negative level, the one that's telling you the bad things is actually created from the very linguistic system in itself, and actually playing that role of the narrator until you be like, look, man, I got this, man. This is my story now. This is why when you're dealing with a narrator, it's always about them, they. Right? Which, again, there's times to talk about them and they, but they always get that name because nobody can really completely identify them, because they can be in anyone. Right? And that's what the Agent Smith is in the Matrix, is like, it can hop into someone. You can see it in your girlfriend. You can see it in different things. At the moment that a person relinquishes control and assumes the program, they can actually be tapped into by the corresponding wavelength, which generally be within that wavelength of conflict and confusion and the myriad of ways that it can actually manifest in your life, which we call minion behavior. This means that there are so many disincarnates See, a disincarnate doesn't have a body and works for other entities. This is what the real troll word comes from. And these entities, their job, because they work in a hierarchy, it's like a military. So a standard warlock will have like 500 of them, maybe even 1,000 of them underneath him to help him carry out his deeds. Meanwhile, everybody gets their ass kicked when they come in and report, and they haven't reported disruption. So this is the hidden world of what they say, that the inverted. See, so okay, so what was discovered is that the other issue with this world, and this is why they show the sun and the moon. The other issue with this world is, in order to make this afterlife manifest, there needs to be certain type of mechanics, and those mechanics get real spooky. Like the nightshade side of things, which has to exist in order for there to continuously be a reflection off the light. Because see, the ocean in itself is a big mirror, and it's reflecting all the lights. You see what I mean? So not only is it the light in the sky that's reflecting off the thing, this thing is just a big ass black mirror basically. Yeah. And that's why the mirror magic, every single thing in modern magic is all about a mirror. Because it lets you know that at a twinkling of an eye, there could be a juxtaposition between the character that you think you are versus the character in the mirror. And this is why they always show the character with one eye. Okay. And that's a one-eye character actually just means like the character on the other side of the mirror, which is actually what your question was about, right? It's like, okay, so what about this other character? That other character exists when you don't have balance. And I guess I'll finalize that question since we kind of close up the container.
Seven, man. This is what I want to know. I want to know, what the hell did you do during that break? Because you came back and you on fire, brother.
I told you,
took a break. Listen, it's
like running track. It's running track. It's like serious. Like I was already primed and everything. I took my breaths and everything, and then we came over whatever the top of the hour was,
bro.
And you wasn't there, and then I started kind of making up excuses and everything. And I figured, like, man, I hit an alarm too. Maybe he was just trying to get some sleep before this or whatever. But so it's okay. So even what I'm doing, you know, I do make it look easy because I've been doing it for a long time, but it's an energetic thing. It requires me to actually go into a wavelength that I'm not, how can I explain it? It's almost like I'm not touching myself. I'm not actually like interrupting my mind and my consciousness if this thing goes well. If it doesn't go well, I'm pretty much checking every stanza of what I'm saying to authenticate it and make sure that it's accurate to the previous thing that I mentioned. So in that way, it could also be very robotic, but it's just basically making sure that the truth in itself stays in alignment with what everything we've said thus far. So it's like a self-updating system. Like, okay, if we're coming out of alignment here, because when you're in a paradox, there's a Biggie Smalls here. So I got to even be able to explain that, but in a way where, like I was saying, hey, it's more like we're all working together versus when we're doing different poles and we're not working together, to understand how positive and negative can work together. Because other than that, most people can't conceive in their mind how two opposing poles in the same field could actually move together. You see what I mean? Without one of them becoming positive or one of them becoming negative. And so to me, that's also what's up with the reality. It's like, I'm not trying to become a woman. So meaning that the whole thing with the whole conscious community and things like they be trying to do to men and try to put them into this thing like you haven't tapped into your divine feminine and blah, blah, blah. You need to become more sensitive and blah, blah, blah. It's not exactly like that. The most important thing is for you to actually truly be who you are. And if you're trying to force somebody to be something that they aren't, or you're trying to basically change a person's path, this is how a person gets off their path. So for me, it's more important to describe such things that I'm explaining now rather than insist that everybody needs to do them. And then in my personal life, if a person is looking in and you're a stickler for detail and you see what I'm up to, you see what I write, and you see how I do it, you may see that mark of intelligence if you made that mark of that. I can afford to put this person in my cabinet of curiosities of intelligence, meaning that I can vet them and say I can at least listen to some of the stuff that they're actually saying because it will be valuable to me, right? So that's what I constantly make sure that I'm doing in this position, because when I got into this position, it wasn't something that I was wanting to do personally, like I'm going to go and be a teacher. It was something that I was told that I have to do. And I thought that it was going to end a long time ago because I thought I was done talking a long time ago. And now I will say that regardless of whatever happens with me, the Matrix, the Resistance, the whole nine, as long as there's some wax still and we got some recordings, everything that I already need to say is generally encased in every single one of my videos. Like I always make a summary of the entire cosmos by the time I'm done with any video that you listen to, right? So for me, it is like I'm repeating myself, but in a different way. And I'm agreeing to stay in whatever grade this is until I get that next upgrade. Like, yo, okay, now it's time for you to move to the next stage. And while I'm here, I try to learn as much as possible. And I learn a lot. Every time that I think about, man, you was going to leave, and think about it, you wouldn't have even learned that, and you would have needed that experience. I can see life as being a great teacher of experiences, right? But you got to throw yourself into it, and you got to challenge it. And so what I do is I challenge gods. That's the first thing I go at. Like I go at what I think I believe in. And so I realized the other day, I thought about this. I said, man, if I don't even believe in God, how can I believe in people? And I sat on that one for a while. And then that all too familiar, very powerful voice, but so quiet, came in and said, because you believe in yourself. Like we got to understand that the belief that you have in your brothers and sisters is directly tied into the belief that you have of you. So if you start writing them off, you're literally writing yourself off. This is really like that. It's like it is very counterproductive for the growth of your DNA to deny it and to actually be disgusted by it and not want it. And I believe that we also have to realize, even as a people, melanin people, when we're making others feel that way, right? Especially people that we even could say is our friends, right? Because I got friends that are all from different parts of the spectrum. But even in some cases, like black folks will make white folks feel like that, basically that they shouldn't even be here, that they shouldn't even be alive, that they shouldn't be created, that they're not even real, that they're ghosts and phantoms. And you got to just think about just that from a whole nother dynamic about the kind of person that you are. And if that clicks, if that ever clicks, it'll also click to you about the Bible and God killing up everybody in the Bible. How anybody that does anything like that, they should never get a pass. You should never be able to kill babies and get a pass. I don't care who you are. Like on the last days of whatever, we'll meet in the sky then, and we'll go at it in, and that'll be the whole thing, because there are principles to life. And that's why I say love. You know, it's love. It's the Taurus. There's a principle to love, and it's pro-life. Why wouldn't it be? Right? If it wasn't, none of this would be here. If it didn't reach out to give the gift, something from nothing, the impossible, we still don't know where the first thing came from. It's impossible to figure it out. So that kind of force, if it didn't reach out an initial gesture, you try and tell me that ain't the most powerful thing is to give? That's why I say, hey, better to give than receive, my brother. Because if you can give, that means you're in the control point. And that's when I realized that this sovereignty thing was a big deal, because there's only a few of the gods that are sovereigns. And that was the whole concept of the Wujra Quran and the sailors, that they were all sovereigns. Sovereign was an actual term that you would receive when you reach a certain stage of actually being self-substantiated. This is what nirvana was really about. It basically means that you're not dependent on any of the elementals. So fire, water, earth, wind, all the air and all that oxygen, all that stuff, you don't need that to exist, right? And that's like, these are benchmarkers for things when you start calling yourself a creator. You see what I mean? And so what I would assume then is now we have this opportunity, as I mentioned before, to bring this stuff into alignment for maybe even ourselves individually sometimes, like more so than in 2023. See, in 2023 now, it's funny because it's 2223 right here on this side. So I guess that's the synchronicity, and it's the third. So in 2023, which is 322, right? In this time, this would be the time that there is somewhat of a fork in the road between us and they. Because see, the narrative is going to get into something so weird that it's going to fuse your brain. And let me explain to you how you know that this is already happening. It's not like just the Mandela effect, but it's the other effect. I'm not sure if you've seen this before, but it's the effect of where somebody will be saying something in like a video, and there will be two words on the screen. And based on the word that you read, you'll hear them say that. Okay? So I'm going to explain this one time, and maybe somebody share a video of this, but I found 2 videos like this. And they just show you how, like, it's like a subliminal thing. They had one, it was about the Barbie and Ken. And it was like, did he say Barbie or did he say, in this case, fuck? And so they'll put the 2 words on the screen, Barbie and that word. And then every time this part plays back, if you read one word, it sounds like that in your mind. And if you read the other, it sounds like that in your mind. And these words are nowhere near alike linguistically.
Right, right.
What is that? It's a back door. It proves that there's now a back door into the consciousness. I call this the yeah, no. Yeah, no is the new phenomenon, because we never said that when we were younger. It was either yes or no. There was a maybe. No. But the yeah, no is like when you could be talking and then you'll be like, you'll feel your brain. Well, you'll just say it. Most people just say, yeah, no. But see, in true logic, these words don't go together. They're actually opposite. So what's actually happening in the brain is the brain is doing the opposite of singularity. It's fusing down. It's basically what would happen if you took 2 positive wires and you just held them together and right? So what I'm just giving you some awareness here that this is what you need to be aware of this phenomenon, because in 2023, this is how people start basically being tied into the narrative of the scarcity and the CDBCs and all this kind of stuff, rather than completely seeing the huge opportunity that is readily available within generative everything. So whether it's generative technology, whether it's generative holistics, the generative component of life is at its highest level. We have tapped into the regenerative components on all levels. So, but you got to focus, is you got to retrain yourself, right? It's a more rapid training, but you need to retrain yourself into generative things. But I'm mentioning this because the generative field is so abundant. Anybody starting in generative technology, if you may, at this stage, is guaranteed pretty much within 2 years to already had leapfrogged the situation in the matrix where they would be coming in to basically try to determine at every point, as I discussed with you when we were talking before, about every point about how you're making your money and who you're paying and who you're paying with and what is that name, and is that name a BOGO, as we used to call it? Is it a house, or is it a profile, or is it really you? And you know, and it's every single thing accounted for. And I just call this AI IRS because neural networks are extremely powerful, but they in themselves are at the behest of their welders right now. And these systems that are coming out, when they're feeding all the medical data, they're feeding all this data and they're flattening this data. Don't think that this thing is like Google and just like a search engine. It's something entirely different. In fact, we are now at the brink. I think we're about 2 months away from GTP4. And once this is generative tech, this is generative AI, general intelligence, meaning that it will be at the level of thinking like a general human. You got folks over here still like, they're like, that, no, brother, that ain't gonna happen. That ain't. And it's like, that's all the illusion that you're in. That's exactly what they've been doing. They've been messing with people's mind so that they got this weird way of seeing the reality, and it's blurry. It's not even the real lens of how the reality is actually designed and put together. And so thus there's like this feeling that if you're consistently making bad judgments and not in alignment with yourself and empowering yourself and those that are around you, that nothing's going to happen. And that's not how this works. You have a certain amount of an allotment of time. And how you know that you received the grace, if you may, or the gift, is because you would be getting knowledge and wisdom that is like people were trekking the desert for thousands of years to hear any of this that we're talking about right now. Even if you could read or if you could speak, you would have to have somebody that actually knew this stuff and was able to tell it to you, let alone put it into application.
Yeah. That's
right. So now we have it where we can put it into application. Like if you wanted to see the other world, it's literally one trip away, but it's not as necessarily about doing that, right? Like now it's like we spent so long thinking there wasn't a spiritual world. You know, even though, like I said, you take DMT, you'll still see right away there's a spiritual world. It doesn't mean that you know what to do there. It doesn't mean you could take all the ayahuasca you want, and it doesn't mean that you know now what to do on the spiritual plane, but you know the spiritual plane exists. So imagine people who would spend 40, 50 years and never even, they just got this Jehovah thing they've been worshiping, and they never even seen the real spiritual plane before, right? So in conclusion, I want to also say that the deep level of knowledge here is that everything is really about your foundation. You have to have the courage to go back in if you need to rework your foundation and get on something solid. And the reason is because obviously when you even grow up in dogmas or you have things happen to you when you're younger, you base everything that you're experiencing on the world from those dogmas. So everything goes into that, like I said, angel or devil category when you have a heavy Christian religion programming sitting under the layer of your metaphysics. You see what I mean? And then so sometimes you got to go back and watch your consciousness and watch your mind and see how much of that residue is still left that is allowing you to go on with certain absurdities that is short-circuiting your very energy. In order to have access to the complete cosmos, you must have a pass. The way that you get a pass through the cosmos is that you actually will help all of the children. You don't care what color they are, any of that, that you will help the children as if they're your own. Because see, what a bad judge does is we got bad judges in the world. They judge the children and like they're not theirs. Like they'll give a young cat 20 years, but he'll never give his son 20 years. So he's not treating that child like it's his child. Because he'd be like trying to rehabilitate his son and all that kind of stuff. So see, our hard north is always to let us know that we're basically upholding the children for real. And we don't care what color those children are. Because every being coming into this space is to be given the proper opportunity to travel, to not only explore, meaning to go out into the reality and to be mentored by the reality, but also to go into that, into the internal. Because is that we already are coming from at least a type 2 civilization because we realize how to harness energy from a star. And this art of harnessing stars is what you would call genetics, okay? Because the gen in genetics is about stars and it's about spirits and it's about specifically spirits that have a specific kind of energy. So what our ancestors were engaged in doing is they were engaged in building organisms and experiences. And now we're inside of this super hacked experience because the holiest of holies has been breached, which is your consciousness. Mm. Because, and the reason why you know it's been breached is because like your dream in many ways can start serving you up things that you don't really want to see. And sometimes your dreams will intentionally somehow get hacked in a certain way and you have this experience that you don't want to have. And then when you get up, you be like, man, I'm glad that wasn't that. I'm glad that was a dream.
Yes.
And the truth is that when you're going through that experience, like you're going through a lot of trauma. Mm-hmm. Like some people can wake up and their pillows will be hot with tears. Mm. It'll be so much sadness in what they experience within this dream. So if we rewind again to, let's say, even the origins of things, we have to realize that we're beings that we didn't use languages initially. The only purpose of a language is really to be able to say a shape. And the only use for doing that, which is called evocation, is to create something in physical realities. Mm. What we're calling physical realities. However, there is original faculty that we still have right now, which is why you dream, which was the original way that we communicated, which was through image. Mm-hmm. Right. So we would send whatever it is that we wanted to communicate to each other through imagery and through feeling and senses, not through language. And so when you can think of when language gets introduced, it's more of like the dark day of the mind, because now a mind that used to be able to, when you close your eyes, that you could see things just as clear as you see things with them open, but you would see whatever you thought about. That faculty now being where when you close your eyes, you see mostly only darkness, and you cannot create images until you, one, give up basically consciousness of the body. That means go to sleep. And then, so basically reach a certain relaxed state to where you detach from the body, and then this olfactory, this system actually starts working automatically. But when it starts working, it is out of control. Like, because which of course in control would be technically a lucid dreamer, somebody who can control the dream, right? And so now that, we're, like looking at it from that level, and we're saying, okay, so can we move back into the past and remove ourselves from an action or an event? And in order to kind of like, well, because the context of the story was to kind of say, well, that wasn't me, or to remove myself from the situation so that situation never occur.
Yes. But
the situation did occur. So what happens is that when we start messing around with time, which would be to rest around in our mind, like I'm going to erase that. We have to understand that what we actually do to ourselves as an organism is we go to the place that it is inside of us, and we kill it, and we seal off and cut off the area. Okay. Now, the important part of seeing it that way is that what happens if you seal off and cut off all of your senses, all like your heart, your brain, because all these different things that you don't like are lodged into these different parts of your real organism. In order for you not to feel it anymore, you have to go and actually, you have to, so you see what I'm saying? Like, this is something that's often missed. It's like, how do you stop caring? Like, when you don't care anymore, like people don't care about the planet anymore. You know why? They're like, man, shit, I'm already dealing with it. How am I going to think about the planet? So it's technically, it's like it's a